The air inside the war room at Pearl Harbor felt heavy enough to stop a man from breathing. Ceiling fans turned slowly above rows of exhausted officers, while cigarette smoke hung over the tables like fog trapped inside steel walls. Outside, the Pacific night was calm. Too calm. The date was July 14th, 1944. Most of America believed the United States Navy now controlled the ocean. After Midway, after Guadalcanal, after months of brutal island fighting, the momentum had shifted. But inside Admiral Chester W. Nimitz's headquarters, something felt wrong. Ships were vanishing near a remote volcanic island chain west of the Marianas. Patrol submarines entered the area and returned with damaged hulls, strange sonar recordings, or did not return at all. Every time Nimitz asked for answers, the rune gave him the same response. There is no enemy installation there. The answer never changed. It came from intelligence officers, from hydrographic experts, from Navy cartographers, from pilots who flew over the islands under clear skies. The cliffs were solid volcanic rock, they said. The waters were charted. No Japanese base existed there. Nothing large enough to threaten American operations could possibly be hidden in that region. But ships kept disappearing, and Chester W. Nimitz had spent too many years at sea to ignore a pattern. Late that night, he stood over a massive chart table under a single lamp. The map showed a cluster of dark volcanic islands rising from deep Pacific water. Most were unimportant. Jagged cliffs, sharp reefs, barely enough flat land for a few coconut trees. But one island kept appearing in reports from damaged submarines. The same island, the same coordinates, the same strange stories. One submarine captain reported hearing engines inside the cliff wall itself. Another described powerful underwater currents pulling his boat sideways without warning. A sonar operator swore he detected hollow space behind solid rock. The official answer remained unchanged. Navigation error. Nimitz stared silently at the map while officers waited for him to speak. At 59 years old, he carried himself with the calm control of a man who understood exactly how quickly panic could spread through a fleet. He rarely raised his voice. He rarely showed emotion. But the officers around him noticed something different that night. He was no longer asking whether something was hidden near that island. He was asking how long the Navy had been blind to it. The Pacific War had become a giant machine by mid-1944. American carriers moved across the ocean with overwhelming force. Factories back home produced ships faster than Japan could sink them, but success created a dangerous problem. Confidence. Some officers had begun trusting reports more than instincts. They trusted maps more than sailors. Nimitz did not. He had learned long ago that the ocean could hide almost anything. Weeks earlier, the submarine Naval had reported a near collision with what its crew believed was a Japanese vessel moving underwater close to the island cliffs. The captain requested aerial reconnaissance immediately. Aircraft arrived days later and found nothing. Intelligence officers closed the report. Another false sighting. Then came the US trigger. On June 26, Trigger disappeared entirely after transmitting a brief message about unusual propeller sounds near Western Cliff Sector. No distress call followed. No survivors surfaced. Search aircraft found only oil slicks and scattered debris floating near black volcanic rock. Again, the answer came back. No enemy base exists there. Nimitz hated repeated certainty during wartime, especially when certainty explained nothing. By August, frustration inside Pearl Harbor headquarters had become impossible to hide. Officers avoided eye contact during briefings. Analysts defended their reports harder each week. One intelligence commander argued that stress and fatigue were causing submarine crews to imagine threats. Another insisted underwater echoes from volcanic formations were confusing sonar operators. But the reports kept coming. One destroyer escort patrolling the region detected brief radio traffic emerging from the cliffs themselves before the signal vanished completely. A Navy patrol aircraft later reported seeing seawater boiling near the rock face for several seconds before calming again. Still, the same answer. No installation, no harbor, no tunnel, no threat. Nimitz finally asked a question that silenced the room. "If there is nothing there," he said quietly, "then what keeps sinking my submarines?" Nobody answered. The Pacific Ocean during wartime was full of rumors. Sailors believed in phantom submarines, cursed reefs, hidden guns, secret weather stations. Most stories died quickly under investigation, but this situation refused to disappear. Every patrol near the island produced another strange report. And there was one detail Nimitz could not ignore. Japanese shipping activity around the region had suddenly increased. Not large convoys. Small movements. Fast movements. Precise movements. Cargo ships appearing briefly before vanishing into open ocean routes where no safe harbor existed for hundreds of miles. American codebreakers intercepted fragments of transmissions suggesting supplies were reaching forces hidden somewhere beyond standard reconnaissance range. But aerial photography showed nothing except cliffs. Huge black cliffs rising straight from the sea. Then came the report that changed everything. On August 11, 1944, Lieutenant Commander Harold Hal Pierce arrived at Pearl Harbor after commanding a dangerous submarine patrol near the island. His boat had barely survived. The hull carried deep scrape marks along one side, as if powerful currents had slammed the submarine against rock underwater. Pierce looked exhausted when he entered headquarters. Salt still stained his boots. He placed photographs onto the briefing table. At first, the images looked meaningless. Dark water. Cliff shadows. Waves crashing against volcanic stone. Then Pierce pointed at one frame. A narrow disturbance appeared on the water surface near the cliff base. Small, almost invisible, but different from surrounding waves. "Awake," he said. The room stayed silent. Pierce explained that his crew observed the disturbance just before sunset. Seconds later, sonar detected mechanical movement beneath the cliff itself, not near it, beneath it. He believed a submarine passage existed inside the island. Several officers immediately objected. Impossible, they argued. No known engineering project could carve such a structure into volcanic rock without detection. Japanese forces lacked resources for a project that large. The geology made it absurd. Nimitz listened quietly while the room argued. Then he asked Pierce one question. "Would you stake your command on it?" Pierce answered instantly. "Yes, Admiral." That answer mattered. Nimitz trusted aggressive officers, but he trusted calm conviction even more. Pierce was not known for exaggeration. He had spent years underwater hunting Japanese shipping through some of the most dangerous waters in the Pacific. If he said something was hidden inside that cliff, Nimitz believed he had seen something real. The next morning, reconnaissance intensified. Long-range patrol bombers photographed the island repeatedly from different altitudes. Submarines monitored the coastline at night. Destroyers tracked underwater sound patterns offshore. Analysts measured tides and currents. Yet every official report still returned the same conclusion. No visible harbor exists. No confirmed tunnel exists. No enemy structure exists. The answers sounded more desperate now. Nimitz noticed it immediately. He also noticed something else. Officers had become more interested in defending previous conclusions than finding new evidence. The bureaucracy of war had started protecting itself. Nobody wanted to admit American intelligence might have overlooked a hidden Japanese naval facility sitting directly along major Pacific routes, especially after months of saying it was impossible. On August 18, Nimitz flew personally to a forward command post closer to the area. Few admirals placed themselves so near uncertain waters unless they believed something serious was unfolding. The officers greeting him expected another standard inspection. Instead, Nimitz requested torpedo inventories. The request confused everyone. He spent hours reviewing submarine attack records, sonar logs, and tide reports. By evening, he stood on the deck of a destroyer, staring toward the dark outline of the volcanic island sitting against the horizon. Even from miles away, the cliffs looked unnatural. Massive walls of black stone rising almost perfectly vertical from deep water. Waves exploded against them endlessly. No beaches, no visible openings, nothing. Yet experienced crews kept detecting movement there. One young officer beside Nimitz finally spoke carefully. "Sir, intelligence still believes the cliffs are solid." Nimitz kept watching the island. "That," he replied, "is exactly what worries me." The following day brought worsening weather. Heavy clouds rolled over the Pacific while rough waves slammed the destroyer hull. Most commanders would have delayed operations. Nimitz accelerated them. He ordered sonar sweeps directly along the cliff base. The mission was dangerous. Jagged underwater rock formations could tear open a destroyer hull. Strong currents pushed ships unpredictably near the cliffs. But the sweeps produced something impossible to ignore. Echo returns varied dramatically across one section of the wall. Some sonar pings bounced back solid. Others seemed to vanish, as if part of the cliff was hollow. Still, several technical officers argued the readings could result from unusual volcanic formations beneath the waterline. Nature, they insisted, could create deceptive acoustic effects. Again, the same answer. No installation exists. That evening, Nimitz made his decision. Crewmen aboard the destroyer US Ringgold watched in confusion as orders spread across the deck. Torpedoes were being prepared. Live torpedoes. Not against ships. Not against submarines. Against the cliff itself. Word moved through the vessel quickly. Sailors exchanged nervous looks while mechanics checked firing systems. Some officers privately believed the admiral was risking embarrassment. Firing expensive torpedoes into volcanic rock sounded absurd. If nothing happened, it would confirm every criticism from headquarters. But Nimitz no longer cared about appearances. He cared about missing submarines. At 6:40 p.m., with rain clouds gathering overhead, the destroyer maneuvered into firing position several thousand yards offshore. Waves crashed violently against black stone, while the ship rolled in rough water. Binoculars lined the rails as sailors stared toward the cliffs. Nimitz gave the order. The first torpedo entered the water with a violent burst of foam. Its wake cut across the dark sea directly toward the cliff face. Crewmen watched silently. Then came impact. A deep explosion slammed through the air as water erupted against the rocks. Smoke drifted across the cliffside. Fragments of stone splashed into the sea. Nothing else happened. Several officers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Maybe intelligence had been right after all. Then sonar operators shouted from below deck. New echoes. Large hollow spaces. Inside the cliff, Nimitz ordered a second torpedo fired immediately. This time, the explosion sounded different. Not solid. Deeper. The cliff face suddenly cracked apart in a shower of volcanic rock and seawater. Massive chunks collapsed into the ocean while smoke and debris rolled outward across the waves. And then the impossible appeared. Behind the shattered rock wall sat a hidden sea entrance carved directly into the island. Sailors aboard the destroyer froze in disbelief. The opening was partially submerged, large enough for submarines or small vessels to pass through at high tide. Camouflaged rock structures disguised the entrance from aerial observation. From a distance, it looked exactly like natural volcanic stone. But it was man-made. Japanese engineers had hollowed out part of the island itself. For several seconds, nobody aboard the destroyer spoke. Then chaos exploded across the deck. Signal officers rushed to transmit reports. Binocular crews tracked movement near the opening. Sonar operators detected frantic underwater activity inside the hidden chamber. The Japanese base had remained invisible because everyone searched for traditional structures. Docks. Buildings. Antennas. Instead, the enemy had hidden beneath solid rock. Nimitz remained calm, while officers around him reacted with shock. But inside headquarters later that night, reactions were far less controlled. Some intelligence officers could barely believe the reports arriving over radio transmissions. Others immediately began defending earlier conclusions, arguing no available evidence could have predicted such construction. But the facts were unavoidable now. American submarines had been hunted near that island by forces operating from a concealed underground harbor. The hidden facility explained everything. The strange sonar readings, the disappearing ships, the radio signals, the boiling seawater. Japanese engineers had exploited volcanic geography perfectly. Supply vessels approached only under darkness. Submarines used concealed underwater entrances. Smoke and heat from generators vented through natural rock fissures higher on the island, making aerial detection nearly impossible. For months, American patrols had sailed directly past a hidden naval installation. And the Navy kept insisting nothing was there. Within hours, additional American forces surrounded the island. Patrol aircraft monitored escape routes, while destroyers blocked sea access. Submarines positioned themselves offshore waiting for Japanese movement. Then came another surprise. The hidden base was larger than anyone expected. Reconnaissance after the cliff collapse revealed multiple internal chambers connected through tunnels inside the volcanic rock. Storage areas held fuel, torpedoes, spare parts, and supplies. Japanese crews had essentially transformed part of the island into a concealed forward operating station, supporting submarine activity across nearby waters. The discovery embarrassed parts of American naval intelligence badly, but it also revealed something important about the Pacific War. The Japanese military remained dangerous precisely because it adapted creatively under pressure. Many American officers underestimated that by 1944. Nimitz never did. Over the next several days, American ships bombarded the island repeatedly. Aircraft attacked exposed entrances while demolition teams studied, captured engineering plans recovered after Japanese evacuation efforts failed. Some enemy personnel attempted escape through underwater passages. Few succeeded. Inside the shattered cliff chambers, American sailors discovered evidence of just how close the hidden base had come to causing serious damage. Maps detailed American patrol routes, submarine schedules, convoy patterns, radio frequencies. The Japanese had been observing Allied movement from inside the island for months. One recovered document described the installation as a shadow harbor. Its purpose was not to launch massive attacks, but to quietly weaken American submarine operations through ambush and surveillance. The strategy nearly worked, because the facility depended on disbelief. Nobody expected a harbor inside a cliff, especially not one hidden so carefully. As reports spread through Pacific Command, reactions ranged from admiration to anger. Some officers privately admitted they dismissed submarine crews too quickly. Others worried how many additional hidden positions might still exist across the Pacific Islands. For the crews of lost submarines like US Trigger, the discovery carried painful meaning. Their reports had been correct. Their instincts had been right. They were not imagining things. Weeks later, while reviewing final intelligence summaries, one officer asked Nimitz what convinced him to fire torpedoes into solid rock, when nearly everyone else said the idea made no sense. The admiral reportedly answered with characteristic simplicity. The ocean was telling us something. We finally listened. That answer spread quietly among submarine crews throughout the Pacific. And it mattered. Because sailors often understood something many headquarters forgot during war. Reality does not care how impossible something sounds. The enemy only needs one hidden advantage. One blind spot. One assumption left unchallenged. The volcanic island operation became an important lesson inside the Navy after the war. Training programs later emphasized careful attention to field observations, even when they conflicted with established conclusions. Analysts studied how group certainty had delayed recognition of the hidden harbor. The danger was not lack of intelligence gathering, it was overconfidence in existing answers. For Chester W. Nimitz, the incident reinforced principles he had carried throughout the Pacific campaign. Listen to experienced crews. Question repeated certainty, and never assume the enemy lacks imagination, especially in the Pacific. The ocean was too large for certainty. Years later, sailors still told stories about the day an American admiral fired torpedoes into a mountain because he no longer trusted the answers he kept receiving. Some stories exaggerated details over time, as sailors often do. But the core truth remained powerful, because it captured something real about wartime leadership. Nimitz was willing to look foolish temporarily if it meant uncovering the truth permanently. Most commanders never reach that point. Many become trapped by their own systems, their own reports, their own experts. They stop asking dangerous questions because dangerous questions threaten confidence. But wars are filled with disasters born from comfortable assumptions. Near that shattered volcanic cliff in 1944, the United States Navy came dangerously close to learning that lesson the hard way. Because somewhere beneath black Pacific rock, hidden in tunnels carved inside an island everyone believed impossible, Japanese crews had been waiting silently, while American officers kept repeating the same answer. Nothing is there. Until torpedoes proved otherwise.